Hello everyone, I hope you're taking it easy and your day has been great thus far. For this video we'll be going through an unboxing and review of Deluxe Class Dead End. And Dead End is part of the recent wave of the Transformers Legacy line. It's probably wave 2, 3, 2, either. Anyway, he has basically come out the tail end of 2022. So continuing on with some of the Transformers Legacy Deluxes, more to the point, continuing the legacy of the Stunticons. So previously I've looked at Dragstrip, I've looked at Wild Rider. Dead End is the third of the 4 Deluxe class Stunticons, with Breakdown being the last and coming out sometime early 2023. Then of course there's Motormaster to round out the lot, but he's far from Deluxe. He'll come soon, somehow. Anyway, moving through the video. So here we have the front of the box of Dead End. So standard Transformers Legacy type boxing. So a nice CG, line art, whatever, of Dead End's alt mode with his weapons attached to the back, which doesn't look too bad. We have Dead End in his robot mode in his packaging, looking not too bad. We have a few thoughts about him later on, of course. We have some nice shots of Dead End once again on the side of the box. So we have a bit of a bust shot followed by a more of a full body shot. We have the standard Decepticon side of the Legacy artwork with the Autobots having the other side, and top of the box just the Legacy logo. And here's the third of 5 components of Menasor, which doesn't seem to make sense because by the time he's come out, he's technically the 4th Stunticon. Anyway, semantics aside. So that's the front and side of the box. Back of the box we have Dead End in his robot mode, his alt mode, which I will admit does look pretty good, and 15 steps to convert between the two. So definitely not too bad looking. I'm wondering if he's going to be another case of certain angles do him injustice whilst others do, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Having seen his promotional images beforehand, I was already dubious about the feet. I do know his backstory, that he is basically a heavy retool of Dragstrip, which you can see in some parts, but we'll see how that goes once he's out of the box. So that's the box looked at. So what I'll do now is I'll open up the box and then we can have a better look at the inclusions before we start having a look at Dead End himself. And with Dead End out of his packaging. So I will say, just as a reminder, make sure you don't accidentally throw everything away before retrieving his 2 weapons, because they are in that piece of paper wrapping attached to the rear side of the packaging. So be careful of that. Anyway, in terms of what was inside, so we have 2 hand weapons like we have seen with the previous Stunticons, Dead End himself, and his manual. So put these to the side. Dead End, we will come back to you. So far, you're not looking too bad. How about we put everything back in view though. Okay. So in terms of the manual, which we'll have a look through first, so standard manual inclusion. First few steps just going through how to add Dead End's handguns to his hands. Then in terms of his first initial steps, so he actually starts off with his hands / arms, and then doing some interesting twisting motions, which can safely say Dragstrip did not have. There you go. Granted, they are two completely different type of vehicles, so that's not too bad. So that's the first 7 steps. Then moving on to the back of the manual. So looks like his arms will tab in quite nicely into the side of his body, and then his legs actually aren't too bad with the transformation. I had this weird notion it was going to be some weird form of drag strip all over again, but I actually feel a bit relieved it is not a complete redo of his transformation. So despite being a very heavy retool, he's been retooled very, very well. So that's the 15 steps to get him into his alt mode. There's his alt mode, and then just a quick step as to how to affix his weapons to the back of his car. And then lastly we have a shot of Dead End doing the literal splits and becoming a limb of Menasor. I will admit, I think I've said this twice in the previous unboxing videos, I'm still not a huge fan. I get the reason behind it, but yeah, not a fan. Not the split look anyway. So that was his manual. Now before we look at Dead End, we do have his 2 included handguns. Now I actually thought they were going to be copies of the same weapons that Dragstrip had. Lo and behold, they are not. They are 2 distinct weapons. So I guess if we, so that's the, actually, how about if I do it this way? No, we don't want to do it that way. We do want to do it this way. Will this work? Kinda. They actually don't look that different from either direction, to be honest. In fact, unlike the other ones, they seem to have the attachy bit on both sides, but they surprisingly don't actually have the mechanism to attach to each other. Okay, so we'll just put these into his hands, which do slot in very nicely. They won't be loose. So that is a quick look at Dead End, sporting his 2 weapons, which, yeah, as I just mentioned, unlike Drag, Strip and Wild Rider, his weapons don't actually attach to each other to make a combined twin barrel weapon, so different, but that's okay. I'm also still not used to the Stunticons having 2 hand weapons. Still remember the days when they used to have 1. So that's the accessories looked at, so we'll just put them to the side now. We'll come back and have a look at those in the alt mode later on. So, Dead End. Before we get into any articulation, so here we have a shot of Dead End top to bottom from the front, from the side, the rear, the other side, top down, bottom up. Does he stand on his own 2 feet unaided? Yes, yes he does. And I guess maybe if we can just do a bit of a close-up on his upper body and head. Now I will admit the head is looking very, very good. It is very Dead End looking, and I dare say, even though he is a very heavy retool, he actually doesn't look that bad. If you try hard enough, you will be able to see loosely where the original parts of Dragstrip were. But I will say he is a very heavy retool, to the point of even I now actually question, was he actually built off Dragstrip? Because there are loose bits that I can see. So the wheels up here, these wheels, the locations of these peg ports are similar, but for some other things, you know, they do actually feel distinct enough. But yes, there you go. Anyway, In terms of colors, so we have pretty much in his robot mode, we can see it nice solid 3 tones of colors. So we've got his black, this nice silver, and I'm actually not too sure what color his vehicle mode is supposed to be. I'm leaning towards some type of terracotta shade. But yeah, there you go. So his colors actually seems quite accurate. Well, maybe not accurate, but a very good attempt at his G1 color scheme. His colors on his head also look really good as well. So I would say general look and aesthetics, it's actually not too bad. It's quite good actually. Definitely on par with what we've seen with the other Stunticons, at least the ones that I've seen so far. Now, in terms of articulation, so starting with the head, his head will do the full 360 without any issues. Should he actually do it, remains to be seen, but I say that every time. In terms of his arms will do a full 360 at the shoulder itself. The arm can also go out all the way that way. Because it can do the 360, it can obviously go all the way to the back and all the way to the front like that without any issues. That's pretty cool. So, yep, we've done that. His arm will also have 360 at the upper arm area, which is really cool. So that means he'll definitely have some extra flexibility for some posing within the arm. He will have a 90-degree elbow as well, which isn't too bad, and because that upper bit can move around, once again, it goes back to having some flexibility with some of those arm poses. The arm will only do 90-degree at the elbow, and the wrist is very much a fixed wrist, so that's actually not too bad. In terms of his arms, it's actually not too bad at all. Actually, it feels a lot neater than drag strip. So that's the arms. I'm just going to put his arms out like that, just for a quick moment. He will do a full 360 at the waist, only because I think that's how he separates. And I never did figure out how to separate these, and I really shouldn't try and separate him while doing a review, just in case Weird and Wonderful happens, and then you get to see an adult male breakdown on a video. Okay, so that's his waist done. In terms of the legs, can you do a full leg split? Yes, he can. I'm going to assume he's got... Well, in terms of his legs, so now that we know he can do the full waist splits, his leg will go... Yes, it's just a little bit stiff. It will go all the way to the front like that. It will pretty much only go about this far to the back when I'm not rotating his waist at the same time, mainly because the back of his leg will start to impact with his alt mode's bonnet, which is forming his back kibble. It's not too bad. I mean, you don't expect them to do full kickbacks like that, and if you do the actual knee bend, it can achieve more of a kickback effect. At the upper thigh in the quad area, there will be a 360 rotation there. His knee will just shy of 90 degrees, just because there will be some... Well, actually, you can do... Can you? If you flatten it out, you can get a nice 90 at the knee, but for the most part, you'll probably be shy of 90 degrees at the knee. There won't be any swiveling at the knee. It will just be the bending to and fro. He does have some form of feet, mainly because they're just his back of his alt mode flipping down. So it can move back and front, but as I mentioned, that is literally the back of his alt mode. But in saying that, it does have some side to side, so in that respect, it is a bit similar to drag strip. So his feet can grow out a bit, so you will be able to extend out his legs and use some of that, I dare say, ankle swivel to your advantage. So that's pretty much a rundown of the articulation from top to bottom. It's definitely not too bad. Some of it's a little bit weak, but mainly because it does collide with other elements of his robot mode. Now, some of the kibble. His arms aren't too bad. That's okay. That's forgivable. I'm not too sure what to say about the back of his legs and his back. Now, his back actually isn't too bad. Given that we've looked at Wild Rider, well, everything compared to Wild Rider is actually a lot better. It does actually fold up a lot nicer and neatly than Wild Rider, so it's not the most offensive, but it is of a significant sizing. The other person who I've recently seen with some very unfortunate back kibble is the B127 figure. Compared to this is a lot nicer and easier to deal with. The back of the legs, well, I really don't know how much of that was necessary. That just literally feels like it's the back of his alt mode, and it's not a complete brick, but that's a good chunk of leg. But it's not too bad. At least it's solid. I think it's probably the main point. So from the back, Dead End does have a bit happening, but it's not too bad. It's solid and it does lock into place nicely, so I wouldn't say it's the end of the figure. Now, before we get into his alt mode, so here is Dead End with Drag Strip. In fact, I'll just put that to the side. We don't really need that anymore. Actually, how about I put the weapons in? We'll put the weapons in quickly so it becomes a bit more of an interesting comparison of the two. So, Drag, Strip, and Dead End. You definitely would look at the two and go, there's no way he's a retool, but apparently he is. Definitely very hard pressed to see because there's only a few points of commonality now between the two. Otherwise, I mean, even if you look at the waist and the upper legs, sure, they're the same type of sorts, but they're all going to be similar that way, but the same detailing of the plastic hasn't been reused. Same with the front of the legs. Now, if we throw in the other Deluxe Stunticon that I have, here we have Wild Rider, who has a lot going on in the back. I also realise he seems oddly tall. It's interesting how between the three already, they all have completely different body shapes. With Wild Rider probably being the weird one, and it's unfortunate that Breakdown is basically a repaint of Wild Rider. I would have thought Wild Rider would have more of a body type matching Dead End than Wild Rider, but there you go. So that is the 3 of the 4 Deluxe Stunticons. So yes, definitely not too bad looking at all. I will probably have some group pictures on my Instagram account, maybe even put some into the community tab as well, so this will not be the end of the Stunticons being shown together, so definitely keep an eye out on that. Okay, so that was his robot mode. Now that we've had a quick look at him against the other 2 Deluxe Stunticons, I will convert him over to his vehicle mode and then have a quick look at that, comment on his transformation, and then have some final comments about Dead End himself. And with Dead End now in his... I was going to try and combine vehicle and alt in the same word. His alt mode. So definitely not too bad looking. So I have attached his weapons onto the back of his vehicle mode just for the sake of. So I guess before we get too carried away, so basically a top-down shot of Dead End, shot from the front, the side, the rear. We'll get back to this. The other side, the underneath, which I will admit is very neat and tidy, and a bit of an angled shot. In fact, just a bit of some of the detailing on his front bonnet. So overall, his vehicle mode is actually not too bad looking. Definitely a nice callback to his G1 look. Do his wheels work? For the most part, yes. I think some of his underbelly might just contact the ground before his wheels do. So the wheels do definitely roll, so no doubt about that. I think it just comes down to, if you look at it, there just might not be enough of a clearance for the wheels to actually do their spin before impacting the underneath of the vehicle mode. Now that's the actual vehicle mode with the two guns attached. It's not too bad, and I guess compared to the others, it's not as weird looking. I still think it's weird looking overall, but it's not too bad. I think it's nice that they're actually tucked away to the back. Now if I was to take them off, put them to the side, that's basically what he would look like without them. I feel like I need to do Legacy Knockout in the near future as well. Now, I don't know if it's specific to all of his molds, just this one. For the most part, everything does tab in nicely for his legs, but for some wonderful reason, for this one anyway, his feet don't tab nicely together in his vehicle mode. So as you can basically see, because it doesn't tab nicely, they start to separate, and it looks like he's basically trying to do the splits in the back of his vehicle mode. It's not the best looking look, and I guess if you want to have a good look at as to why it looks terrible, this is probably a good angle to look at it. So I mean, if I was to put the legs down, it's actually not too bad. The parts will come together a bit better, but yeah, in fact. So there's that little tab piece right there. But when you try to tab it into the other one, it just doesn't want to tab very well. Now, I will admit, I do have a second dead end. So maybe it is just this particular dead end. Given I don't have to do a review of the other dead end. So I'm going to crack that open in the next few days and see if it's limited to this dead end, or if it's possibly a bit of a failing of the mold itself. I'm hoping it's just mine, because that would be really annoying if it was like that. In saying that, when I did Core Class Ratchet, some of the tabbing just didn't tab very well. So his alt mode, whilst overall looks quite nice, because the tabbing wasn't tabbing all too well, you start having all these like gaps forming in the alt mode, and it actually starts to look quite detracting. So unfortunately, that'll probably be one of my criticisms, that until I know further, that tabbing is not great. Other than the tabbing issue, his alt mode is quite nice. Everything else tabs in quite nicely, like his arms up here tab very nicely into the side of his body. Yeah, everything but his feet. I should probably stop trying to do this, because this is when bad things happen on camera. I mean, it feels like it should tab, but the resistance against the 2 just untabs it very quickly. So yes, if it is a case of just this particular version of Dead End, this one is definitely staying in robot mode for sure. And that's why I have 2 of them. Now, as for his transformation actually was quite intuitive, so I quite enjoyed his transformation. Drag Strip was another transformation I enjoyed. Wild Riders was a little bit hit and miss, but I did actually quite enjoy Dead End's ones. Yeah, if you pick them up, you'll see what I mean by intuitive, and if I ever get into the process of doing recordings of transformations, maybe one of these days, start off with something basic and do him maybe. But yes, I mean, these are his arms, which basically, as I said, tab quite nicely. The bonnet comes together nicely. The majority of the legs, it's just the feet that are a little bit airy frame. Color scheme wise for his alt mode, it's pretty much what we saw in his robot mode, but he does have his nice sprinkling of silver on the headlights, as well as his very iconic little racing stripe down his left side, I dare say. But yeah, he does look very cool. So, Dead End. I apologize in advance. They do have their weapons on. Drag Strip. Wild Rider. I do still quite like Wild Rider's Ultimate though. So that's 3 of the 4 Deluxe Stunticons together. So I will admit they do look really, really cool. So definitely don't quote me as ever saying I didn't like the Stunticons in Legacy. It's far from. They do look really cool. So once again, there will be some more shots of all of them together on Instagram and other places. So that's Drag Strip. And then against Wild Rider. So, some final thoughts about Dead End. So if I bring his instruction manual back. Robot mode. Articulation's pretty good. There's a few points where it's a little bit weak, but that's okay. Aesthetically, he's definitely really good looking. I think my only criticisms would be not so much his front, but his back. Whilst his back kibble, thankfully, will be relatively tidy, it does feel a bit on the larger side, but in saying that, since I have him right next to me, at least it's not that. That is terrible. Do something with it. The other thing that felt a little bit weird was just the back of his legs, because they do feel like it's a huge chunk of his rear alt mode. Other than those 2 criticisms, his robot mode is still quite solid, and I do quite look of him. So if you're posing him and you're just looking at his front, not a care in the world. So that's my thoughts on his robot mode. Vehicle mode does look really good. Like overall, the vehicle modes for all the Stunticons have been really on point, so I definitely can't say anything negative about that. The colors are good, the general profile is good, and yeah, there's probably nothing really negative to say about his alt mode. The only criticism is, and once again, disclaimer, not sure if it's just mine or the entire line, the tabbing of the back bit with his feet, not so great, because you can just see that unfortunate separation between the 2. It is a bit distracting. Transformation, I actually quite like the transformation. It was really good 15 steps. It's probably a relatively short transformation to figure out, so That was really good as well. So I'd definitely say from a transformation perspective, really good as well. So generally, Dead End is a very solid figure. The only criticisms really, well, points of contention. Alt mode, his rear section, and in his robot mode, just how they've handled some of his back legs and his back kibble. But I think the most contentious part is just this part right now in his alt mode, unfortunately, but it is what it is. So that brings us to an end of the unboxing and review of Legacy Dead End, with a few cameos of both Drag Strip and Wild Rider, just as a bit of comparison. So that now puts me up to 3 out of 4 Deluxe Stunticons. I do have Motormaster, I just haven't had a chance to do the unboxing because he is obviously of a larger scale, so I'm just worried it's going to be a bit of a time sink to do that, given that these videos are never short in their own right. Haven't decided who's on the list for next week. Check out my community tab. I'm going to try and at least do a 24-hour pre-warning of which video is coming up. I might flick back over to the Beast Wars side of things, or I could stay within the Legacy line, especially with the newer releases, while they're still relatively fresh. We'll see. I wouldn't mind trying to do 2 Transformers videos per week, but recording them is, as I said, a little bit of a time sink, so I'm just dubious about time. We'll see how things go. Minimum at least 1 video a week. Thank you very much for sticking around for this dual unboxing and review video. Feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the content. All of this does help support the channel, and I do greatly appreciate it. Extra content can also be found on my Instagram account. Link to that will be in the description as well. And as I've mentioned a few times, feel free to check out the Instagram account for some additional pictures and or short videos of Dead End, as well as Dead End with the other Stunticons. With that being said, stay safe and take care, and I will catch you all in a future video. See ya.